Hey guys, welcome back to a bonus video from One Candle Society about white shadow people. And as always, we are your hosts, Marcus D.
and Vic Whaley. Thank you guys so much for liking our previous video. That lets us know what you guys are wanting us to produce. This has been a great ride. We've had a lot of fun doing the research on this one, and with no further ado, white shadow people.
So white shadow people are these white, translucent, shadowy figures with no real facial features. They're very similar to the shadow people phenomenon that we often have heard of, except they're white. And that's really where the similarities end.
One of the first notable changes that makes them distinctly different from regular shadow people is people's sensations when being around them. People very adamantly report that they are not afraid of these things, unlike regular shadow people, which seem to be not only inducing fear, but doing whatever they can to drive it and amp it up. But people very strongly assert that they had no fear in this thing's presence, which strikes me as very odd.
Yeah, when you look up accounts that people have with white shadow people, when they talk about how they're not afraid, they will often capitalize not, or their whole sentence will be in capitalized letters about how this thing didn't make them feel afraid, or it'll be at the very forefront of their explanation on this. They'll be like, well, I have to say it right now, I was not afraid of this entity, which is very odd in the world of the paranormal.
First of all, when encountering something that's outside of our normal, a degree of fear is just a natural response. Beyond that, I would imagine that this should be a little more fear-inducing than a regular shadow person. The white form is going to stick out more pronounced than the shadowy form. The shadowy form can be very easily written off as a trick of the light or a trick of the eyes. But a white form like that, it's much harder to write off. It just falls much further into the field of the strange.
And we've talked about shadow people extensively on this channel. In fact, our longest video that we have is a whole talk just on shadow people. And we're going to put a link in the corner for you guys to be able to click on it if you guys want to watch it. And one of the things we talk about a lot in that video is how us and other people truly believe that shadow people are either feeding off of fear, inducing fear, creating fear in people. And we just don't seem to see that here with white shadow people.
And if you choose to watch that video, just bear with us, guys. It's been a while, and it was a pretty awkward video. We were just starting out.
Yeah, we were just trying to get our feet wet when we were trying to figure all this stuff out and how to do a YouTube channel. And I think that we've come a little bit since then.
Yeah, and I was still doing my creepy reading voice.
Yes, he was. He was trying to talk like a creepy cowboy trying to seduce people.
Just mainly just how my dad talks. But moving on.
A distinctive feature in white shadow people encounters is that people will talk about hearing this loud booming sound right before seeing a white shadow person. People have described it as hearing like banging on metal or like a metal trash can being knocked over. It's very odd.
Yeah, one of the first things that makes me think of is the buzzing sound normally associated with regular shadow people. For those of you who aren't aware, some people who encounter shadow people, particularly when they're manifesting, they create this buzzing or popping sound. It sounds like it's something similar, but also something different, with it just being one loud boom.
And the differences of the sound make us kind of think that there may be differences in how they're manifesting. Kind of a buzzing sound that regular shadow people make, kind of like bees or mosquitoes or whatever, however you want to describe it. It's almost like it's slowly manifesting versus a booming sound kind of sounds like a rip.
Yeah, it's kind of like the difference between someone doing a knock on the door and a policeman kicking in the door.
Which is odd because even though you're hearing this more forceful sound, you're having a more positive encounter with this type of entity. And in comparing the two, with shadow people having these buzzing sounds, it kind of is similar to ghosts, which is why several people try to attribute the shadow people phenomenon with ghosts.
And, well, there are other things that make these big booming sounds in the lore. Some UFO manifestations are associated with it, but what it reminds me a lot of is some of the angelic lore, where they appear with the sound of thunder and things along those lines. And those aren't the only entities that follow this sort of tradition, though. Yeah, the lore is filled with sort of creatures that, as they appear, there's a loud boom explosion. But another thing from modern day that really reminds me of this, and there's not really a direct connection, it's just something that my mind gets pulled to, is the recent sky booms that we've been hearing over the last several years. I'm not saying there's a connection, but it just draws my mind there. And we can't emphasize this enough. These appearances are extremely, extremely rare. I mean, you can try YouTubing white shadow people and just nothing will come up.
Except for now.
Yes, except for now. But if you try to search for the stories, the lore on these things, it's really, really hard to find. It takes a lot of digging.
In talking about the relationship to white shadow people versus traditional shadow people stories, they're often sometimes seen closely together. People report seeing white shadow people either at the same time as shadow people or shortly before or shortly after in their stories, which has led people to believe that there is some sort of a connection to the two. Either one draws the other, white shadow people are there to ward off shadow people, and it even goes even deeper into like a interdimensional war between the two entities. I mean, there's no shortage of theories about like the relationship between the two.
Speaking of relationships, we talked in our video on shadow people how the relationship that people form with these shadow people mimic an abusive relationship. You can somewhat see something like that with the white shadow people, where people are immediately very quick to defend them. Almost like in the process of this short interaction of them, they've been emotionally overwhelmed or emotionally suffocated. That they feel so connected to these things in a very short period of time that they can't even begin to fathom or express negativity involving this person.
It draws memories to me of friends of mine that I've had that have been in really poor relationships before, and they get into a new relationship, and whenever they're describing their new relationship, they immediately have to talk about how this is different, there's nothing wrong with this person, they're amazing, they're great, they're wonderful, like really upfront and really abrasively. And it throws up kind of a red flag to me that they're doing this.
In many ways, I actually find this to be a little more scary. You also find a discrepancy in the MO of a traditional shadow person to a white shadow person. With traditional shadow people, they're usually entering into someone's life when they're at a low point or at a weak spot, looking like they're trying to be an emotional predator on that sort of person. You don't really see that sort of scenario when it comes to white shadow people.
And another thing about white shadow people, comparing them to traditional shadow people stories, with traditional shadow people stories, they get more descriptive in their appearance and more aggressive. You'll see stories about shadow people just being humanoid shadow figures, up to shadow people having clothing features, up to glowing red eyes, and Hatman encounters. Versus white shadow people, they don't appear to have an escalating appearance. They just seem to only have this white shadow form. At best, in stories of this, you get differences of either masculine forms or female forms. That's about to the extent of any real difference that you'll see with their descriptions.
You also, with traditional shadow people stories, many of these encounters will be very long and repeated, with the shadow person revisiting the same person repeatedly over long periods of time. With white shadow people, it seems more incidental, where they pop in and they're gone and they don't repeatedly visit.
I guess in conclusion, my thoughts on white shadow people, it's really hard for me to give one. You know, I've talked about in this channel that the best way for us to study the paranormal is to compare multiple stories. Well, with white shadow people, we really don't have that. There's a very, very small collection of stories about them, making it very difficult to try to really kind of give any real good theories on white shadow people. Now, what I can say is that we've seen a lot of traditional shadow people stories for us to make the assumption that shadow people often piggyback off of other paranormal entities. So at best, with the information that we have, maybe shadow people are piggybacking off of these white shadow person entities.
A lot of people seem to be very quick at concluding that these ones are the good ones and the other ones are the bad ones. I really wouldn't be so quick to make that statement. I'm not saying that these are necessarily super evil entities, but I would be hesitant to really want to trust into the belief that these things are here for our good. I would say there are aspects of their behavior that does seem like it may be oppressive. So if you have an encounter with one, of course, be careful, as always. And if you guys have stories on any of these, please send it to us. We need a higher sampling of different views on these.
Hey guys, thank you for tuning into our bonus video about white shadow people. I was so happy to see all of the likes that I got on my glimpse into the dark video about white shadow people, and that's why we did this video. Be tuning in next week as we're going to give you guys another glimpse into the dark on another aspect of the paranormal, but you're going to have to keep an eye out to find out which one.
Also guys, please take the time to share this video. Like we said, we don't have a whole lot of information on this stuff, and we're hoping if this spreads around, we might be able to get some people to send us some news stories so we can get a better picture on this.
But don't forget, keep believing.
Because we'll keep listening.